Hi everyone, it's 1:59 here on the East Coast. We're going to give everyone just a minute, and while we're waiting, we just have a few reminders. So number one is that we're going to start at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central Time, 12 p.m. Mountain Time, and 11 a.m. Pacific Time, which is now. And that you are currently in listen-only mode, so you should be hearing me through your computer speakers. We're going to take questions at the end of this webinar using the chat box on the bottom left side of your screen. We're going to answer questions during the last 10 minutes of the webinar, but please feel free to type them anytime they come to your head. Also, we're going to mail out certificates to you by the end of the day on Tuesday, June 26th. Certificates will be blank, so if you're watching with a bunch of people, please go ahead and print one out for every single person in that room. And we have your email addresses because you use them to register for the webinar. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin. Okay. Hold on one second. So hi everyone, my name is Mimi Wu, and I'm a nutritionist with the Nutrition Education, Training, and Technical Assistance Division at USDA's Food and Nutrition Service and Child Nutrition Program. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on adding whole grains to your menu. This webinar is part of Team Nutrition's monthly CACFP Halftime 30 on Thursdays webinar series. These webinars are held on the third Thursday of every month in both English and in Spanish. The English webinar is held from 2 to 2:30 Eastern Time, and the Spanish webinar will be held from 3 to 3:30 Eastern Time. These webinars are recorded and will be made available at a later date on the Team Nutrition website. We will have time at the end of this webinar to take questions, and of course you can use the chat box at any time during the webinar to enter your questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can at the end. And right now in front of you, you'll see that we put up a poll. We want to know who you are. So please go ahead and select one of the following listed on the slide here if you haven't done so yet. Do you work for a child care center, family child care home, at-risk after-school center, adult daycare, sponsoring organization, emergency shelter, school food authority, state agency, or regional office? Great, great. Well, there's a lot of you here and from all different parts of CACFP, and we're just so happy to have you. So now, let's go ahead and get started. As many of you know, and as shown on the Growing a Healthier Future with the CACFP infographic on the screen, many Americans, including children, get up to twice the amount of refined grains that they should every day, but do not get enough whole grains. Many whole grains have the vitamins, minerals, fiber, and other nutrients that help kids and adults stay healthy. Because whole grains are so healthy, the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, now requires that the grains served at one meal or snack every day must be whole grain rich. Whole grain rich means that at least half the grain ingredients in a food are whole grains, and any remaining grains are enriched, bran, or germ. This is very important, so I will say it again. Whole grain rich means that at least half the grain ingredients in a food are whole grain, and any remaining grains are enriched. Some examples of whole grain ingredients include whole wheat flour, whole grain corn flour, cracked wheat, whole grain oat flour. Some examples of enriched grain ingredients are enriched wheat flour, enriched white flour, enriched durum flour, and enriched rice flour. In the CACFP, the requirement for one whole grain rich offering per day applies to children and adult participants only. There is no whole grain rich requirement for infants. If you are serving meals to preschool children in the National School Lunch or School Breakfast programs, this requirement for whole grain rich foods once per day applies to the preschool children as well. We will discuss ways to tell if a food is whole grain rich at a CACFP halftime webinar later this year in October. In the meantime, this slide shows some foods that are whole grain rich. If you serve these foods, you know that what you are serving can be counted as whole grain rich in the CACFP. These foods are just examples of some whole grain rich foods, and there are other whole grain rich foods that are not on this list. You can always contact your sponsoring organization or state agency if you have any questions on whether or not an ingredient or a food is whole grain rich. Whole grain rich foods include oats, so that's your steel cut oats, your old fashioned oats, quick cooking oats, instant oatmeal, and oat groats. Also brown rice, wild rice, quinoa, bulgur, which is a grain commonly used in Middle Eastern dishes, and teff, which is a grain used in some African dishes, are also whole grain rich. Additionally, foods that say whole wheat bread, whole wheat buns, or whole wheat rolls on the package, or entire wheat bread, entire wheat bun, or entire wheat rolls, or graham bread, graham buns, graham rolls, again on the package, are considered whole grain rich in the CACFP. Similarly, for pasta, those that specifically say whole wheat macaroni or whole wheat spaghetti can be considered whole grain rich in the CACFP. Again, at least once per day in the CACFP, one offering of grains must be whole grain rich when you are serving adults or children. It doesn't matter if you're serving the same group of kids or adults throughout the day, or if you're serving different groups of kids or adults, such as if you have a morning group of kids and then an afternoon group of kids. If your site serves grains that day, you're required to provide at least one whole grain rich offering per day. And of course, you can always serve more than one whole grain rich foods or serve it more than once per day. You must serve enough whole grains to meet the minimum serving size for the age group. This is a very important point, so I'm going to say it again. You must serve enough whole grains to meet the minimum serving size for the age group of your participants. So, for example, 3 through 5-year-olds are required to have at least half a serving of grains at breakfast. So half a serving is your serving size, the amount. It's got to credit towards half a serving of grains. If you want to meet the whole grain rich requirement at breakfast that day with this age group, you should serve enough of the whole grain rich food to credit as half a serving of grains. You can serve more than half a serving, but you must serve at least half a serving of grains for a reimbursable breakfast. Okay. Another example might be if you serve adult participants. Adult participants in the CACFP are required to have 2 servings of grains at lunch or supper. So they must have enough grains to credit as 2 servings. If you want to meet the whole grain rich requirement that day at lunch and you're serving adult participants, you should serve enough of the whole grain rich food to credit as 2 servings of grain. Again, you can serve more than the 2 servings, but you must serve at least 2 servings. You might want to try offering whole grain rich foods at different meals throughout the week so that participants can see all the different ways that whole grain rich foods can fit into the day. This might mean serving oatmeal at breakfast on Monday, serving quesadillas made with whole grain rich tortillas on Tuesday, and serving whole grain rich crackers at snack on Wednesdays. So now let's do a quick knowledge check. I'm going to ask you the question on the slide here, and then I'll go to the next slide where you can actually select your answer by clicking the box or the circle on the screen. So the question is, your family childcare serves the same group of kids for the entire day. Today, you serve enriched toast at breakfast, brown rice at lunch, and yogurt and fruit at snack. Does today's menu meet the whole grain rich requirement for the CACFP? For this question and all other check your knowledge questions today, assume that we are serving enough of the foods to meet minimum serving sizes. Okay, so go ahead and click on the circle next to yes if you think this menu meets the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP. Click no if you think it does not meet the requirement. Again, you have the same group of kids all day at your family child care, and today you served enriched toast for breakfast, brown rice for lunch, and yogurt and fruit for a snack. Does this menu meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP? I'd love to see all these answers coming in. Great job. All right, thank you everyone. The answer, as many of you know, is yes. Because the brown rice is whole grain rich, it counts as your one whole grain rich offering for the day, and your menu meets the whole grain rich requirement for CACFP. If you had two different groups of children at your center during the day, such as a morning group and an afternoon group, this menu would still meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP of one offering of whole grain rich foods per day. The requirement is one whole grain rich offering per center or home per day, not one whole grain rich offering per child. But as I've mentioned before, you can certainly serve whole grain rich foods more than once a day, and you can try including them at different meals and snacks throughout the week. This way, everyone will have a chance to try and enjoy whole grain rich foods. So now let's talk a little bit about snacks. As you know, a reimbursable snack in the CACFP needs to have foods from two different components. The 5 components you can choose from at snack are milk, meat alternate, vegetables, fruits, and grains. Being able to choose 2 out of the 5 components means that grains are optional but not required at snack. If your site only serves snacks, so that means you do not serve breakfast, you do not serve lunch, and you do not serve supper, you are not required to serve whole grain rich foods at snack. But if you do decide to serve a grain at snack and you do not serve any other CACFP meals, then your grain must be whole grain rich. So here are some examples of snacks in the CACFP that meet this whole grain rich requirement. As you can see, each one of these snacks includes foods from 2 different components. Sample 1 has string cheese from the meat alternates component and apples from the fruit component. Sample 2 has bean dip from the vegetables component and whole grain rich crackers from the grains component. Sample 3 has low-fat milk from the milk component and fruit salad from the fruit component. As these examples show, you do not have to serve a grain at snack. But if you do serve grains at snack and it's the only grain you're serving that day, then it must be whole grain rich. This is shown by example 2, the bean dip and the whole grain rich crackers. So now let's do a quick knowledge check about snacks. Let's say your afternoon program serves only snacks. So again, you're not serving breakfast, you're not serving lunch, you're not serving supper, you are just serving snacks. Which snack or snacks do not meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP? Your options are enriched muffins and low-fat 1% milk, whole wheat toast and peanut butter, applesauce and low-fat milk, diced pears, and whole grain rich mini bagels. So go ahead and fill out the poll and select a snack or snacks that do not meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP. Again, A is enriched muffins and 1% milk. Option B is whole wheat toast and peanut butter. Option C is applesauce and 1% milk. And D is pears and whole grain rich bagels. And the question again is which snacks do not meet the whole grain rich requirement in CACFP? Okay, give you a couple more seconds. Wonderful, I love seeing all these answers come in. Okay, nice work, everyone. So the answer is answer A, the enriched muffin and low-fat milk do not meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP because your grain food, the muffin, is enriched and not whole grain rich. Because this is the only grain you are serving that day, it must be whole grain rich. Now I want you guys to take a look at answer C, the applesauce and low-fat milk. That snack does not include any grains. Because grains are optional at snacks, it is okay for this snack to not have any grains as long as it contains food from 2 different components. So while grains are optional at snack, they are required at meals, which in the CACFP are breakfast, lunch, and supper. That means if your site only serves 1 meal a day, meaning you only serve breakfast or only lunch or only supper, then the grains you serve at that meal must be whole grain rich. Now, let's take a closer look at breakfast. As you know, in the CACFP, at breakfast you are required to serve milk, vegetables and fruit, and grains. You also have the option to serve meat alternates instead of grains up to 3 times per week. If you only serve breakfast, again, that means it's your only CACFP meal of the day, and you want to serve meat alternates in place of grains, you do not have to serve a grain at that meal. On days you do not serve a meat alternate, you must serve a grain. If breakfast is the only CACFP meal you serve that day, that grain must be whole grain rich. And if you'd like more information on serving meat alternates at breakfast, be sure to check out Team Nutrition's Serving Meat Alternates at Breakfast worksheet, as well as the recording of the CACFP halftime webinar on this topic. We will send out a link in the follow-up email you will receive a few days after this webinar. So now let's do a quick knowledge check about breakfast. Your adult daycare serves only breakfast and only does so 3 days a week. Which breakfast below does not meet the requirement for whole grain rich in the CACFP? Is it milk? Is it fat-free skim milk, eggs, fruit salads, low-fat milk, enriched pancakes, sliced strawberries, low-fat milk, oatmeal and blueberries, or milk, beans, and cheese? So go ahead and fill it out on this poll, and we're kind of limited in character count, so you'll see that the word strawberries gets cut off, but you guys know what it means. So again, your question is, which breakfast does not meet the requirement for whole grain rich in the CACFP? Is it milk, eggs, and fruit salad, milk, enriched pancakes and strawberries, milk, oatmeal, and blueberries, or milk, beans, and cheese? Okay, I'll give you guys a couple more minutes, or a couple more seconds actually. Wonderful. Okay, so the answer is breakfast B. The low-fat milk, enriched pancakes, and strawberries do not meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP. The pancakes are enriched, not whole grain rich, and since this is the only grain your daycare will serve that day, the grain needs to be whole grain rich. Now let's look at the other options now. Breakfast A includes milk, eggs, and fruit salad. There's no grain in this breakfast because the egg, which is a meat alternate, is replacing the grain component. This breakfast still has the required milk component with your fat-free milk and the required veggies fruit component with a fruit salad. So this breakfast is reimbursable in the CACFP. Breakfast B, we already talked about. Breakfast C includes milk, oatmeal, and blueberries. Oatmeal is whole grain rich, so this meets the CACFP requirement of at least one offering of whole grain rich foods per day. This breakfast also has the required milk component with low-fat milk and the required fruit component, blueberries, needed for a reimbursable breakfast in the CACFP. Finally, breakfast D includes milk, beans, and cheese. This is similar to breakfast A, where cheese, which is a meat alternate, is served in place of the grain. This breakfast still has the required milk component with the fat-free milk, the required veggies and fruit component with the beans, so this breakfast is reimbursable as well. Okay, and now let's take a look at something called offer versus serve. If your at-risk after-school program or adult daycare program serves breakfast, lunch, or supper using a type of meal service called offer versus serve, or OVS, and you want to meet the whole grain rich requirement at the meal that uses OVS, then all the grains you offer at that meal must be whole grain rich. So let's do one last knowledge check for understanding. Your at-risk after-school center serves supper using OVS and also serves snack. You want to meet the CACFP whole grain rich requirement at supper and offer two options from the grains component, whole grain rich rolls and enriched crackers. Does offering these two options meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP? Go ahead and select your answer here. Again, you want to meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP using OVS at supper. So you offer whole grain rich rolls and enriched crackers. Does this meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP? Okay. All right, nice work everyone. The answer is no. Offering whole grain rich rolls and enriched crackers at OVS does not meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP. When using OVS at meals that meet the whole grain rich requirement in the CACFP, all grains offered must be whole grain rich. So, in this example, you could continue to serve the whole grain rich rolls and substitute the enriched crackers with whole grain rich crackers or another whole grain rich food that's not a roll to meet the CACFP whole grain rich requirement. For more information on offer versus serve, you can check out Team Nutrition's offer versus serve in the CACFP worksheet, as well as a recording of the CACFP halftime webinar on that topic. And finally, I just want to wrap up with some food for thought to give you guys some ideas of different whole grain rich foods that you can serve at different meals and in snacks. There are certainly other whole grain rich foods you could serve, and you can serve these foods at any meal or snack in the CACFP. At breakfast, you could try serving oatmeal, whole grain rich pancakes, whole grain rich waffles, toast made with whole wheat bread, whole grain rich muffins, whole grain rich cereal, whole grain rich English muffins, bagels, and biscuits, such as the baking powder biscuits shown on this slide. These whole grain rich biscuits are a USDA developed and standardized recipe that can be used in the CACFP as well. We will include the link to this recipe in the post-webinar email you will receive early next week. For the cereal and oatmeal, you want to make sure that your cereal and oatmeal meet the sugar limit for cereals in the CACFP of not more than 6 grams of sugar per dry ounce. For more information on sugar limits for cereals in the CACFP, you can check out Team Nutrition's Choose Breakfast Cereals, our lower and added sugars worksheet, as well as a recording of the CACFP halftime webinar on that topic. At lunch, some whole grain rich items, including your lunch or supper's menu, include whole wheat macaroni and spaghetti, whole grain rich pita bread or pita pockets, whole wheat buns or rolls, whole grain rich pizza crust, whole grain rich tortillas. You could also try including some cooked whole grains such as brown rice, wild rice, quinoa, and bulgur, which is used to make a dish called tabbouleh that you see a picture of on the screen. This tabbouleh is another USDA developed and standardized recipe that can be used in the CACFP, and we'll send along the link to this recipe as well in your post-webinar email. And finally, at snacks, you can serve a whole grain rich crackers, whole grain rich pita wedges, whole grain rich cereal mix, whole grain rich pretzels, rice cakes made with brown rice, and whole grain rich banana bread. The banana bread square shown here is another whole grain rich recipe that's USDA developed and standardized, and of course, we'll include that recipe in our post-webinar email as well. So this concludes the information portion of our webinar for today. We'll take questions in a few minutes, so please go ahead and start typing or continue typing them now into the chat box on your screen. While you guys are getting your questions entered, I will go over some post-webinar housekeeping information. Those of you who attend the webinar for the entire 30 minutes today will receive a certificate via email by the end of the day on Tuesday, June 26th. Please wait until after June 26th and also check your spam or junk mail boxes before asking about your certificates. If you're viewing the webinar with multiple people, you can print out a certificate for each person. More practice questions are available on the National CACFP Sponsor Association website at www.cacfp.org, 30 on Thursdays. We'll send that link out in your email as well. And for those of you who want to submit or track continuing education credits with NCA, you can do so at that link too. This webinar is being recorded, will be made available on our website. And if you're watching this as a recorded webinar and want a certificate, you can go to the National CACFP Sponsors Association website at that address, complete the post-webinar practice questions, and then receive a certificate. The certificates may be sent a few days after completing the questions. Once again, thank you for joining us for today's webinar on adding whole grains to your menu. Next month, on July 19th, we'll discuss feeding infants 0 through 5 months, and then in August, we will discuss how to support breastfeeding in the CACFP. Finally, please feel free to visit our website, subscribe to our monthly e-newsletter, connect with us via email at teamnutrition@fns.usda.gov, and of course, follow us on Twitter. And now we'll take some questions. In the room with me are Katie Hallis, Kenya Pennington, and Ann Hall, 3 colleagues here in child nutrition who will be helping me with answering and asking your questions.
Great job, Mimi. Thank you for that great information. We do have quite a few questions, so let's see if we can get through quite a few of these in the next 5 minutes.
Sure.
So the first question here is, I know infants are not required to have whole grains every day, but if I choose to offer whole grain rich crackers to an infant 6 to 11 months of age as part of a snack or when they're developmentally ready, is the snack still reimbursable?
Yes. The snack is still reimbursable. Even though the infant meal pattern does not include a whole grain rich requirement, you can still offer a whole grain rich food item to an infant as part of a reimbursable snack.
Great, thank you. Next question. Can centers and daycare homes decide which meals or snacks will include a whole grain rich food?
Yes, so all CACFP program operators, whether you're at a center, a daycare home, adult daycare center, emergency shelters, etc., can choose to serve a whole grain rich item at any meal or snack as long as one offering of grains that day is whole grain rich. So, say you're a center, you can choose whole grain rich cereal at breakfast on Monday, brown rice for lunch on Tuesday, whole grain rich crackers for snack on Wednesday, and so on. Again, this requirement for one offering of whole grain rich foods per day applies to your site, not the child. So again, if you have two groups of kids at your center, again, the morning group and the afternoon group, the requirement is still just one whole grain rich offering per day.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. So whole grain foods are more expensive, at least I think, and sometimes they're hard to find in stores. Do you have any suggestions for cheaper options?
That's a good question. That's certainly one we've gotten quite a bit. So some whole grain rich foods that may be more common and may be about the same price as non-whole grain rich foods include brown rice, oatmeal, and some breakfast cereals. Buying in bulk, meaning buying larger packages, might end up being cheaper as long as you are sure you will use all of it before it goes bad. If your store doesn't carry what you want, you can ask the manager to order it for you if they're able. We know of many cases where stores are able to accommodate special requests.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Oh, this is a good one. So I know grain-based desserts aren't allowed anymore, but what if they're whole grain rich? Then can we serve them?
So grain-based desserts such as donuts, sweet rolls, toaster pastries, and cakes cannot count towards a reimbursable meal or snack in the CACFP, even if they are whole grain rich. You may serve grain-based desserts as an extra or additional food that does not count towards a meal pattern. But of course, FNS encourages you to serve the whole grain rich foods that can be counted towards a reimbursable meal instead.
Great. Thanks, Mimi.
Of course.
We're going to turn this next question over to Anne.
Okay. Hello, Anne.
So, Anne, we have a question here. Are cornflakes whole grain?
Cornflakes are not typically whole grain. You will have to look at the ingredient list to see if they are whole grain. So if it said whole corn flour, then they would be whole grain.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. Mimi, next question here. If I serve a whole grain at breakfast and they serve hamburgers or hot dogs at lunch, then can the bun be regular white bun at lunch?
So if you've already served your whole grain rich at breakfast, the bun at lunch should be enriched. So all grains served in CACFP must be whole grain rich or enriched, or for breakfast cereals, fortified. So you look for the word enriched on the package, or ideally whole wheat if you want to give them just that extra nutritional boost.
Great, thank you. So if they serve a whole grain at breakfast, they could still serve a whole grain at lunch, right?
Definitely.
They're not limited to just once a day?
Of course.
Great. Okay, so this one's for Anne. Is it whole grain if it's listed on the front of the package, or does it have to be on the ingredient list?
It depends on the type of product. So as Mimi said earlier, there are certain foods that if it says whole at the beginning on the package, such as certain types of bread. So if it was whole wheat bread, what's the other one?
Whole wheat bread. I'm pulling up the slide right now. Okay. So whole wheat bread, whole wheat buns, whole wheat rolls, whole wheat macaroni, whole wheat spaghetti.
Yeah, so it's only the breads and the pastas that you can go with the word that's on the front of the package if it says whole. Otherwise, you must use the ingredient list.
Exactly. And it's got to say whole wheat. And it has to do with this other regulation. But what you guys see on the slide right here, and we can send out these notes in the post-webinar email as well, these foods can be considered whole grain rich.
Great. Thank you both. Okay, so next question. Do you have to serve whole grains at all three main meals?
You do not. In the CACFP, so it's different for schools, but in the CACFP, at least one grain that you serve throughout the day must be whole grain rich. We invite you to serve whole grain rich at all three meals per day, but the minimum is one whole grain rich grain per day. And I'm getting the sign that this is all we have time for, so thank you all for all your great questions. And please do know that even if we didn't answer your questions and comments, we do read them, and we also read the comments in the post-webinar survey in order to make sure we continue to improve these webinars and meet your needs. So thank you all so much again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar on feeding infants 0 through 5 months on Thursday, July 19th. Thank you, everybody.